that there's.
How about the schools letting the kids that are in the portal play in the game?
Oh, yeah, I know.
What ridiculous. Is that?
Yeah.
So I think the problem with the portal, and one of the reasons why it's so bad right now, is because NIL and the portal happen at the same time.
And welcome everybody to this edition of the 941 Sports Zone. I'm John Massoni, and to my left is my co-host John Peacock, and we're here at Douglas Jeep, our home for 941 Sports Zone, and hopefully we will have a bang-up show tonight, John. We have a very special guest that we'll introduce here in a few minutes to join us here tonight for a very special topic as well, having our show be more of a one-topic situation where we kind of expand on how it affects the local community, national, state, and how we usually follow our normal format. But before we get started with that, let's kind of do a little recap from last week's show because you, with your predictions, like I did with the John Rahm situation, had a bang-up prediction outcome.
Two of three, but in reality, I was 8 of 9.
Right.
You know, because all three teams I picked were in the championship game, and not Newsom, but Palm Harbor lost to Alonzo,
which was the eventual winner.
Right, the eventual winner. But to get there was 8 wins, 1 loss. So 8 of 9. It's pretty good.
No, that'll get you a good time in Las Vegas or anywhere with those kind of.
So we're doing really well on our picks. So we're really 9.
Yeah, I mean, I got Rahm, and then I've got
8 of 9.
I've got mine hanging out. You got yours hanging out for the football season when the line comes out in Alabama, and I've got my prediction about the draft. So so far so good. We'll see if we can keep that flow going.
What was the prediction about the draft? The first
4 quarterbacks in the first 10 picks.
Right. Okay.
Four quarterbacks in the first 10 picks. That was my thought on that one. With that, also a quick update as well. We talked a lot about the Rays last time, and they were on a winning streak.
We should have bet that. That was an easy bet. They're going to tie it.
They got to 13-0.
And I watched it the next night, and they were smoking whoever they played. And then the next night, the same thing. And then you're like, and I was sitting there, I was like, oh, it's tonight's. I think it was Friday, right?
Right.
Was the 14th game?
And they ended up losing. Yeah.
And they lost. And they lost the 15th game as well.
Yeah, so they went to Toronto and played against a pretty good Toronto Blue Jays team, and they came up out of their 2 out of 3. They lost, but
they were actually winning up to the 5th inning or something, and they fell apart one inning. They gave up 4 runs.
Bit of a collapse. You're absolutely right. With that, they're currently 14-3, kind of going through like they said. You got to learn how to lose to keep on going with a long season like there is with baseball. 162 games.
They still put themselves way out in front.
Yeah, when you get a 13 game cushion, so to speak, on everybody else, you're doing all right. Now, I will say this: the division they're in is pretty stout. So they've got to keep a good pace.
They're going to need that cushion.
Keep a good pace, and then of course a little bit injuries here and there, which are always going to happen. But some pitching. A couple of the guys we talked about, or at least one of them, Springs. Josh Springs, he ended up getting hurt, and he might even be out for a full few months with a little elbow issue. So we'll see how they can hold together. The lineup looks stout this year, and we'll keeping our eye on them a lot this year to see how far they go. All right, with that, what we're going to do now is kind of tell you what our topic is, and first actually introduce our special guest, Trey Burton. I would say Trey is a Venice. So go do the whole local state thing. Venice, he's a Hall of Famer, you would say, at least?
I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I'm still saying he's a
I think he was supposed to be in and it got canceled.
But Venice Hall of Famer. I'd say he's a Gator great and a record holder at the University of Florida for sure.
He's a Florida-Georgia Hall of Famer.
That's a Hall of Famer.
Florida-Georgia game Hall of Famer.
Right. So he's got the state covered.
He's also on the all-time Florida high school first team offense as a tight end. That's pretty impressive.
Yes.
That's probably one of the most impressive things he's on.
So the resume really pops from on the state side.
I don't know how long he can keep that though. Because you look at the people.
How's that possible? I wasn't a tight end in high school.
Hey, don't argue the fact you're on it though. Be proud you're on it. He's on it as a tight end.
I know.
But look, I don't know how long he can keep it, but you should see the people on the list. It's incredible. It's incredible.
And then if I will say this, from his NFL career, he is legendary.
No doubt.
Legendary.
He'll be
in the NFL.
You'll see him every single year forever.
Right.
Forever.
Right.
There will never be a year where he's not on the Sunday of the Super Bowl forever.
And that's the truth. So that's, I said, legendary NFL career as well. So that's Trey Burton, and he's joining us to talk tonight about a subject that I'd say, Trey, that for you, it's sort of a very high interest for you. You've got a lot of opinions on this. It's about the NIL, which is the name and likeness effect, or I should say the NIL situation that the NCAA is now allowing student athletes to go ahead and get their own advertisement or endorsements or whatever you want to say that they can do, but it's kind of become a little muddled up. And you had a good fortune, if you want to expand on this, to go actually to Congress not long ago and speak to the Committee on Energy and Commerce regarding the subject.
Yeah, Congressman Gus Bilirakis, he's up in Pinellas County, I believe, area. He invited me to go up there and basically just testify in front of Congress just on the issue and what's going on there. The Congress is trying to get a federal law or bill passed so that there's a uniform set of rules and laws and regulations that happen across the state boundary lines. So all 50 states will have the same exact, bare minimum rules. And now universities and schools will now understand and will now know what they're able to do and what they're not allowed to do. Because from what I understand, every school has to follow the rules in legislation from their state, I believe, that the governor passes. And so the Congress is basically trying to have a sweeping rule throughout all 50 states where there's just some type of understanding on what is going on and what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. And
like you said, that there is an interest in this, not just from a sports perspective, because obviously it's a sports issue, but the interest it goes way deeper than that, because there is so many other things that can be affected by this. Like I said, you've got I know that when you testified in front of there, you had talked about how this would have been such a promising situation for you when you were in college. The opportunity to go ahead and have a revenue stream while you were in school, and this is going to have a lot of effect on a lot of different issues in regards to colleges, and not just competitive balance, but just the idea of how everything is going to be run on the universities.
Well, it's just so crazy, man. What the NCAA has done for hundreds of years, and now what they're allowing the kids to do now, and like when John and I played in college, we would have 5 a.m. practices, and for them to feed us, they were only allowed to give us bread, and they couldn't give us peanut butter or jelly or butter or anything any additive. They could just give you toast, bread in a toaster, and someone from the team had to bring the rest of the stuff for everybody else to eat.
Right.
And so just going from that to where they're at now, it's just saying it's a 180 doesn't do it justice.
When you were in school, were you allowed to work?
No. Well, the problem is, I think you're legally you were allowed to, but the compliance was just such a disaster that you had to go through that It really wasn't.
Because I know when I was in school, you weren't allowed to have a job. You could work in the summer. You could have a summer job, but you could not work during the school year. Like when you were on scholarship, you could not work during the season.
I couldn't even tell you, but I know the rules.
I'm not sure you have time, but you weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
And the NIL, it is not name, image, likeness. It is basically they're paying players.
Right.
And they're paying players to come, and it has nothing to do with them using their name, image, or likeness.
Well, what you just said is a good bridge to kind of what we're talking about from a local perspective. Okay, I'll ask you first, John. How does this affect high school athletics? How does it affect athletes? I mean, is there going to be some sort of competitive imbalance because, things get done around, hey, come over here and come do this, or come play with me for me.
I don't think it's going to affect high school as much, but I had firsthand experience with all of this. With we just had 2 5-star guys in our programs, and one a major player, and that everyone was after, and it was basically they were throwing money left and right, and it had nothing to do with name, image, or likeness. It was basically here's money,
right?
And these kids aren't using their name, image, or likeness for anything. They're just getting paid. There's a bucket of money, and there's money being used to pay these players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It does. I mean, I shouldn't say it hasn't affected us, and I think it's going to be a big effect. But there are kids that there was a kid in California, I think, that or there was actually a kid in Georgia that forewent his senior year and went to Texas A&M to collect money.
And then he left.
And from your
same with the kid from Texas that went to Ohio State.
Yeah.
You were
Quinn
back in
Ewers.
Texas.
Yeah, the kid
Same
from
thing.
Milton, in your uncle's area, he left a big D tackle, didn't play his senior year because he was going to get paid.
Well, I'll ask you the same question, Trey. Like I said, when you think about some of the places like, where football is everything as far as high school concerned in Texas or Alabama or Georgia, even Florida, when do you get to a place, and I'm just going to use this as an example, not to pick on any particular area, but like a place like Miami, all right, in the city of Miami, there's talent everywhere. And how long before somebody's like, hey, you know what, come across the street, we got a better deal for you. But and that sort of happens, or can it? Is it because is there anything that could stop the high schools becoming sort of the wild west?
Well, some things I'm hearing
it has to do with enforcement, though, right? Don't you think? Like, I mean, yeah, that can happen. That could have happened years ago. It could happen today. But like, I think a lot of the problem with all of it is the NCAA is not sitting here and enforcing any of the rules or laws that they still do have.
Right.
There's rules, and you can't. I mean, that is against the rules in high school. You can't offer a kid money to come play.
But that wouldn't that have affect their eligibility at the university level, right? At the college level, if they had taken money in high school, then they couldn't have gone and played. It would have been ineligible, or something would have happened. And I think now isn't that not the case? You're able to do that.
I don't know if they'd punish the kid for that. I mean, I don't. That's the thing of being amateur or pro, but I don't think that would be considered. If somebody was giving a kid money to come to a school, I don't think it would be considered becoming a professional athlete. But the thing is, like, what I'm hearing from a lot of schools is, let's say like Kent State has a great D tackle that maybe wasn't a big recruit, but he became a great D tackle. And he has a buddy over here that's playing at Arkansas, and his buddy at Arkansas says, hey, if you want to come over here at Arkansas, I think we can give you $200,000 and an apartment. And so all of a sudden he's in the portal and he ends up at Arkansas. So that happens a lot from what I'm hearing from college coaches in college.
And Trey, you same thing? You're hearing the same stuff, or what?
Yeah, I think. I mean, yeah, 100% what John's saying. I think basically what he said earlier, that like NIL wasn't intended to be pay for play. It was intended for you to maximize on your name, image, and likeness. So if Gatorade wants to have you on a commercial, then shoot, you should be able to be compensated, financially for those, for that time and for that commercial. Same with, if Florida's selling a number 15 jersey, well, I mean, no one else other than Anthony Richardson have worn number 15 jersey, with Tebow on the back. So like, right. Tim should have paid for every jersey that was sold, at wherever in the stadium or wherever they sell it. And
his name's on every one of them. It's not like it's just his 15. They always have the name on it too. So there's no doubt about that.
Likeness was intended for, and then just like everything else that the NCAA does, they basically just open floodgates. And they do have, like John was saying, there are laws and rules that you can't, break, but it's the enforcement of those laws and rules, instead of it just being a slap on the wrist, you have to actually, enforce them and have enough manpower to enforce all the problems and issues. So like John's saying, every year, I know, specifically at schools in the state of Florida, you have to re-recruit your players, every single year. So you got to make sure you guys aren't going to go nowhere else, because there are teams that, like we said, paying for players to play there through the portal. And so that's why I think there needs to be because every state law is different. So like, for example, some states you're allowed to be a high school athlete and make money on NIL. In some states you're not allowed to. Same with, college. There's some states you're allowed certain rules, and those schools, for example, Washington State's AD was testifying in front of Congress with us, and they have no laws on NIL. Like, it's basically a free for all over there. And so like, they hypothetically, if they have enough money to spend, they could basically buy every player that they wanted to buy. But so that's why I think there needs to be some type of law or some type of rule, just so that enforcement is clear, the breaking the rule is clear, and then you kind of go from there.
Another question I was going to ask you about this as well. I mean, you're obviously the coach, and you have somewhat of, I guess, a certain influence over the athletes. You know, you're the coach, you're probably your mentor, you're a teacher, you're all the things that do you think that at some point in time that if there's sort of an underbelly to this, that they would start coming and knocking on the coach's door to kind of get things pushed or to influence a player or a family or something like that?
That would be nice. That would be nice. No. Well, I mean, I think when you start talking about money and you start talking about that kind of thing, I mean, if you look at basketball and where that's gone and all the AAU stuff, and that has happened. Like
Bingo.
they have started paying the AAU coaches, and those guys are getting money and they're getting things that they asked for to influence those kids to go to a different school or go to a certain school. I unfortunately have never had that experience.
Right.
No one's ever offered me anything.
And one of the things too, we're just, it's not a football exclusive situation. You know, some of the highest paid athletes right now or NIL are gymnastics women are making money on their name, image, and likeness.
But that's what it's intended for.
Right.
They should be able to do that.
Right.
That's what it's intended for. But what's happening in football and big time basketball schools, what's happening is not what it's intended for.
Right.
Like I was talking to, I don't even know if what's legal and what's not legal, but I'm talking to a coach and I'm saying, well, tell me about this NIL thing. Like, how much money you guys get? He's like, well, you know, we have $4 million for a quarterback. I said, you have $4 million for a quarterback? So you're going to pay $4 million for a quarterback you recruit? He goes, yeah, we have earmarked $4 million for a quarterback. Wow.
So I guess at some point it's going to be like you have a general manager, you know, to manage everything.
Like the problem, like my argument with all of that, the pay for play aspect is that's not sustainable. Like if you don't win immediately, so for Texas A&M, if Jimbo doesn't win this year, and maybe he gets one more year, but after that, like what's up? Like they're not going to. Maybe they might still continue to have that much money because they have all the oil money and the huge endowment and those types of things out there. But man, it's not. Smaller schools that don't have as much money is not sustainable to pay a quarterback $4 million, especially if he just transfers out, and gets a quarter of it or half of it or however much percentage of it already, and he doesn't play a snap. It's just not sustainable. And like John's saying, it's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right. And one of my questions was, okay, if you got all this NIL money, or you call it the collective at Florida or whatever, so they have this pot of money that they're paying these players. Well, that money's being taken from some other area. It's got to be, because if you're going to pay a player $4 million to come play for you, that $4 million is coming from something. Whether it would have went to facilities or whether it went to travel or something, it's coming from something that you're going to lose.
Yeah, there's a dollar
out on.
Even if it's $1 it's if it was like a giving day type of scenario,
right?
It doesn't go to the giving day normal things. It goes to putting money in a pot.
It has to come from
athletes.
somewhere. It's going to have to come from somewhere.
In reality, money's always been used to recruit players. It's just in different forms. Whether it's the nicest facility, whether it's staff members, nutritionists, wait staff, nicest training room, nicest gym. Like money's always been used to recruit these players, and now that they're able to get paid off in name, image, and likeness, it's just another notch that the big schools or the schools that want to compete have to have on their belt. So you still got to have a nice facility, you still got to have the right coaches, you still have to have all these other things. But now then you're adding like a collective or NIL opportunities on that belt of things that you offer, each student athlete.
Yeah, but I mean, what's the payroll? I mean, if you're going to pay a DN that's a kid in high school $500,000 to come play for you, well, next year you got to pay somebody else.
It's not sustainable. The pay per play is not. But the NIL, what you're saying is, there's funds that are hypothetically being taken from people giving to the universities or paying for whatever at the universities, and now they're being put into these collectives. But I think one of the biggest things in my argument, with Congress was the last thing you want is for the players to be employees of the university. That opens up a whole another book of or can of worms for everything bad that could possibly happen with that. That's, in my opinion, that's where professional or amateur sport becomes professional sport. Now, when you're really getting paid for play and paid for your performance. Things like trades and firing people and all those things can happen, or cutting people, I guess if you want to use that word, can happen now freely. Right. You're an employee of the university, and then also some states are pushing for what do they call it? These kids to unionize. and basically be a separate union, kind of like the NFLPA. But if that happens, and now you need a collective bargaining agreement, and there's so many other things that happens. And when unionizing, that's when the less or non-generating revenue sports basically go extinct. They get taken rid of because there's no point of having them if you have to pay and they're not making money. So it's a huge issue, and it's gonna have something to happen here in the next year or two. But right now it's a wild west.
Yeah.
But that will take a quick break right here. A good chance to stop. And I'm going to go back to that point you just made about the union situation to kind of get your opinion on something as well when we get back. So we'll be back here at Douglas Jeep with 941 Sports Zone shortly.
It's time to put some spring in your step during Douglas Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram Spring Sell-Down Event. Drive a new Jeep Grand Cherokee from only $279 per month during the Jeep Celebration Event. Or choose a new Wagoneer from $549 per month. Or get behind the wheel of a new Ram 1500 Quad Cab from only $359 per month during the Ram Truck Month. Don't miss the Spring Sell-Down Sales Event going on now at Douglas Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram in Venice. Who has Spring Sell-Down savings? Douglas does!
And we are back on the 941 Sports Zone. And as we left for the first break, we were kind of talking about a few things that Trey had mentioned about the unionizing potentially of athletes in college athletics. And one of the things I was going to kind of go back to a little bit was with the colleges doing these collectives, okay? And honestly, you had asked, well, where's that money coming from? It's being taken from somewhere. How the approach, I think I'm pretty sure what they're taking is they're asking you for a separate donation. Well, you're a booster, but you're also going to give money to another fund that's going to be part of the collective.
Better players.
Right. So with that, I keep on saying, you said how it's an endless stream of what it's not sustainable. And I'll use the example of T-Bone Pickens at Oklahoma State. I mean, there's a guy whose name is on everything on campus. He's a multi-billionaire, person. What's to say that he just couldn't say, I'll fund the whole thing. I'll put $1 billion in there, and I'll have a higher amount of money or whatever. I mean, that's where it could end up going, don't you think? In regards to whatever these boosters start to become so, I guess, enthralled with being able to buy players to come to their university and win a championship.
Yeah. So. I know, John, you're familiar with what's going on in Florida, and so I'm on. I just got asked to be on the board for Florida Victorious. And
okay.
So basically, what happened with Florida Victorious? The reason what that is, that's Florida's like main or number one really now collective. And so before Florida Victorious, I believe there was 3 collectives, and now they're all under one umbrella. But
right.
So to answer Peacock's question is, there's 2 ways of revenue for these collectives. Number one is like a subscription-based model. So you pay, I think it's $15 to $250 a month, and whatever level you're at, you have certain access to current, former events, tailgates, tickets, you name it, along with that subscription. And that's the for-profit side. And they also have a non-profit side where you are giving money as well to a 501c3. So now it's a tax write-off. And in change, these kids are getting the money. And what we're doing at Florida is these kids have X amount of charitable events, whatever they want to choose. And there's 10, 15 organizations in the Gainesville and surrounding areas that these kids will go do. And so that's another source of income for these collectives. But then the third one is the brand to player. So for example, like a Gatorade or for like a Nike, if they want a player to rep their stuff, then they can pay that player directly. And so those are kind of like the 3-4 ways, that these student athletes are able to make money.
Let me ask you a question. So let's say you got this 5-star number 1 quarterback in the country, and Florida says, all right, well, we're going to pay this kid $4 million. We're going to pay him $4 million a year to come to the University of Florida, and they pay him $4 million. What is that player's responsibility, or is he held to any kind of contract? I mean, what holds him at Florida is what if the University of Notre Dame, gets somebody to him and says, hey, well, we'll pay you $8, as a sophomore to come play for us. Like, is there anything that holds them there?
Well, that's a non-sustainable side of it, right? But then I believe if there were contracts like that, now there is language in those contracts. Whether it's $1 million a year, or $250 the first year, and basically very similar to an NFL contract. And if you're not a student athlete at that school, then the contract is null and void. Or there's certain ways for not necessarily the school, because the school isn't the one paying them, but whatever booster is paying that kid directly. There's certain ways now, but before, 6 months ago, I don't know if that was necessarily the case. And I think a couple of boosters kind of got, screwed over by kids, going to school and then being there for a year or a couple months and then dipping and going somewhere else that offer them, even more money. So I'm not necessarily sure. I've never personally had conversations about, paying a player $4 million to come to school, because that's not what NIL is intended for.
But I'm saying, like, there is, so the collective at Florida, I mean, what is that for? I mean, is it?
We're never talking to high school kids. It's all current kids that are enrolled at the university.
Okay, so let's just say a current kid. So a current player, they say, all right, well, let's just say Richardson's still there. And they say, all right, well, we're going to give Richardson X amount of money. Mm-hmm. And you're giving him X amount of money. Then all of a sudden, after spring, he enters a portal. Like, is he held accountable for anything, or is he just, all right, well, we just lost that money?
You talking about, like, does he have to pay it back?
Pay it back, or is he allowed to do that, or what is the deal?
I don't see why not. I know that the way they're doing it is it's not like a year term of a contract of, like, because, like, so as soon as you sign an agreement with the collective, I believe now I am allowed to use your name, image, and likeness on things, right? So that's part of the deal. Like, we pay you for your name, image, and likeness. Now we're able to do certain X, Y, and Z, with your name, image, and likeness. And so I think once you decide you go in a portal, or once you decide you go to a different school, you are no longer part of the university, and there is no business between each other.
So he just goes along his way, and he keeps the money that he was paid. And
I would imagine. I mean, I'm not as well versed in that, just because I think I accepted it 3 days ago, maybe 4 days ago. So, and I don't had an issue with that, but I can't speak too much on it. But I don't know.
It just seems like, if the players are getting this money, and especially like a high school kid off the bat, like, there should be some accountability for him or some expectation for him to stay at that university. Mm-hmm. Especially if they're getting that type of money, or even if they don't live up to expectations. Like, all right, well, we're not, we're going to pay you this amount of money, and then you show up and you're a flop. Like, all right, well, you're not going to get the money.
Well, I mean, now you're leading into my response for the very end, the last segment of the day, and I'm not going to say what I want right now, because I'm going to save it for the very end.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I'll say one thing too, that could be sort of how maybe to the advantage, or from a good perspective, women's college basketball. There's now a big push for the female athletes that are playing basketball to stay in college, because they can make more money in college than they can in WNBA or going overseas.
Men's basketball too. There was a kid at Duke, I believe, that would have been a top 10 pick, and he decided he wanted to stay one more year. It's same with last year Castleton at Florida. He would have been a probably pick, but he ended up staying at Florida. So I think
that's a lot. That's
by NIL or making their own money.
Either way, they can make more money. I mean, they can go out there and sell their wares, and they can, because the collective is, that's for everybody. So you have a great golfer, and he can go to the PGA, and you want him to be there because you want to promote your team or because that Tiger Woods is a Stanford grad. I don't know if you know that or not. Okay,
I did.
Okay, well, Tiger's, I mean, his brand is all over Stanford, and you'd want Tiger to be around there as long as possible. You knew he's going to be a pro and he's going to kill it. But if they had the money now, they would definitely try to get Tiger Woods there, and it would have been something worth their while, and it probably would have been. I mean, if he was enjoying himself,
that'd be a lot of money.
Yeah,
he's worth like $2 billion.
But even think about this.
Well, you see the kid that just came in 10th at the Masters. He wasn't able to make. Technically, I think he won like $1,000, but he wasn't able to receive that money because he's an amateur, right? So what happened? Texas A&M is now T-Mobile just sponsored him. Now he's the official partner with T-Mobile in golf for college athletics.
And see that's how it. So now that guy can stay another year or whatever he wants to do, and he's already, especially now golf's a different situation. We can kind of tie a little dotted line to live golf, where the guaranteed money is there.
Right, but
and now the same thing happens in college.
What Trey just said, that is what NIL is for.
Right.
For like T-Mobile to do something like that, not for the university to collect money and to pay these players.
Right.
You know.
Well, and then that's really, like I said, we're talking about, what is it? You don't want to employ athletes. You just, I mean, you're absolutely right. And then going back to what we said that about the unionization of it. One of my opinions in the situation and how everything has sort of been thrown into the air, and it's a mess right now trying to figure this all out. No real rules involved. I think the NCAA when I think that started at Northwestern University, if I'm not mistaken, and I think they looked around and said, "My gosh, what's happening here? If we start to get infringed in employment situations and right to work situations, we're going to be in litigation forever. Especially if we try to throw rules at people." Right away. So I think the NCAA approach was, you know what? Let's just let it all play itself out. Let's watch the melee happen, and then they'll come to us and they'll ask us for help how to fix it, or somebody will come to us and say, "Hey, straighten this out." As opposed to being the one who says, "I'm going to set the rule," and everybody's like, they have attorneys and whatnot pick it apart. Yeah. Let it go crazy, and then they'll come to you for help. Does that sound like it was a fair assessment of what may have happened?
Yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, I think a lot of this overshadows the positive of NIL, and I think a lot of it overshadows the fact that this should have happened years ago, man. Like, it should have never taken this long. But there are a lot of positives. There's a lot of men and women that are able to help back home, help their families back home, people in need. And from a Florida standpoint, like, there's a bunch of guys that are going out, and like initially I was kind of didn't really agree with the situation of like these kids having to do charity, because I felt like to a degree it has to be out of the goodness of your heart, or else it's not really called charity. But like seeing the effect that it's made in the Gainesville area, and just from just a simple tweet, a picture of a kid, Anthony Richardson at the Boys and Girls Club, like, man, that's put the Boys and Girls Club in Gainesville on a whole different stratosphere from where they were 2 or 3 years ago. And there's hundreds of stories of situations like that come out of it. And so there's a crap ton of good stuff and positivity that's there and that's coming out of it. But obviously we like to focus on the negative things and the what ifs and what should it be and those type of things. So
the notoriety of the player is going to shine a light on a subject that may not, or a situation that maybe nobody knew about in Gainesville or Tallahassee or wherever it may be. So that's probably I think that does like I said, I kind of like that approach, because then it does allow you are still growing as a person when you're in college. You're maturing and physically and mentally.
Amateur, and I'll stand on the table till I'm blue in the face. Like, it's amateur sports. That's why we love it, because it's an amateur sport, and we don't want it to be a professional sport. And we got to figure out a way to walk that nice fine line, because it's even greater now than it has been in the past.
Well, and being fans of college athletics, the enthusiasm, the pageantry, the whole sort of like collective mentality of it all is what makes it so special. And then if it just becomes hey, I'm here, I got a check and I'm good to go. I mean, what's to say that you're going to have somebody just say, hey, I'm not going to play the last 5 games because I got a little ankle injury and save myself for the next check.
You're going to have bad apples, though. I mean, it's going to happen.
Sure.
Like, not perfect, and not everybody does what they're supposed to do. So there's going to be negativity, and like, you look at what happened in the bowl games now, man. Like, no one plays in the bowl games anymore. Like, if you're not playing in the playoffs, like, there's a good chance you're probably, when you have a chance to get drafted, there's a pretty good chance, unless you're. And I think this is one of the guys that can basically change the whole aspect. Like Nick Saban, like, he is not paying. He comes out, we're not paying kids to come here. We're not letting kids sit out. Like, if you're a competitor, you compete in bowl games and those types of things. It's like they
don't want to sit out.
Yeah,
the players don't want to sit out because he's got a culture there.
Yeah,
the big problem is with college. There's not many coaches that have been around at a school for that long.
Yeah,
well, you're right, and I think a lot of this too. The portal has a tie to this as well, but the idea is that everybody was saying, my gosh, these guys can't make any money. It's you said you were getting fed bread, in the morning. You're not sitting there, and so there was like, how can they get a meal? How can they do this? How can they do that? But yet you got coaches and they're out there making 7 figures to 8-figure salaries, and then when they decide they want to go from Oklahoma to USC or wherever it may be, and they can not only just go with themselves, but they're dragging some of their players with them. that doesn't make
or
it a
they
fair,
have a bad season and then get fired.
right. But then the kid.
I think one of the things, man, that doesn't get talked about enough is like, so basically the NCAA opened the floodgates, right? And there was nothing set to help these players out, right? So now you can make as much money, but like, how do we save? Like, how do we pay taxes? Like, how do we invest? Like, none of that stuff there was no foundation for any of that stuff. It was just basically open the floodgates and let the water go wherever it goes. And so I think the schools that are really going to get ahead in this NIL stuff, obviously the ones that are able to, pay financially, but the schools that are able to help with financial literacy. Because like now, I mean, I can only speak from my example, but I had no clue what taxes were until I got to the NFL and started making money. Like I remember my signing bonus was $10,000, and I got $7,500 in the check. And I said, "Where the hell is my $2,500?
Who stole my $2,500?"
What's going on? But and I had to learn fast about taxes, and sometimes people have to learn the hard way. But I think there needs to be more of an emphasis now on the financial literacy side of things and more help now. And that's why I think it's really dicey when it gets to high school. Like, man, the resources that the schools are able to spend on financial literacy, I mean, it's not even comparable to what high school kids, have. They have literally YouTube, maybe one professor or one teacher in the school that can kind of help them out for the most part. So I think it's a lot more dicey when it gets to high school, but I think there needs to be way more of an emphasis on the financial side of it for these kids.
I've been beaten on the table about having a class or a curriculum built for athletics that that has that about taxes, about 401k, about how to take care of your money. There's all types of avenues you can take in athletics, whether you're going to be a trainer, you can be an agent, you can be a professional football player, and everyone looks at football as an extracurricular activity, where they look at being a nurse as a profession.
Yeah.
Right. But I can sit here and say, well, holy cow, I got 5 guys that are in the NFL that are making 10 times the amount of all the nurses put together in the county over the last 10 years. Like there are, and then put on top of that, people that are physical therapists and people that are, you look at Ryan Callahan, who's in the recruiting office, at Nebraska. There's just a ton of things that people can get involved with, but in the high school level, we look at it as just an extracurricular activity instead of an avenue of profession, being a coach or whatever it may be.
Yeah, there's a large curriculum that's potentially out there, and inside of athletics. Correct,
and then I've been trying to develop that and maybe get a curriculum based off of that, but
so
it's tough.
Trey, at Florida, with Billy Napier building that large amount of support with recruiting and everything else. I guess this is going to be a big part of it as well. Sort of maybe that's part of the process of not only just to get these guys recruited and whatever, but actually giving them an education and where they can go with their money and be prepared to be professionals or whatever they're going to be prepared for in life.
Yeah, with that large coaching staff that he has, he's strategically, I think he has like 3 or 4. I think one of the lady, her name's Savannah. I think her last name's Bailey. Man, she's been a rock star. She actually she took 15 guys up to New York City to go watch the stock exchange.
Oh, wow.
Multiple other like Gator business men and women in the city to talk about finances. And like she's just gone like above and beyond, what typical, I don't even know what her role is, but what typical people do, at that level, and just the financial literacy she's doing and the people she's bringing in to speak to these kids. It's been really, really impressive.
Well, in the state of Florida, could, in regards to that, could that be sort of a blueprint for how it should be handled, all over the country? Is that there's something that they're putting together that maybe it could be mimicked in other places, or is that just still too early to say if it's going to be successful or not?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to keep that proprietary to Florida.
Right.
Officially, but whatever. I think for sure it definitely needs to be something that each university needs to do, in whatever way they see fit. But they need to do more than what they're currently doing.
Yeah.
Do they have the kids set up a 401k or some type of retirement fund?
That's a great question. So they can't force anybody to do that, right? Obviously,
right.
Like I believe they can give them the option to withhold the taxes or the hypothetical taxes that they would need to be paying, so they wouldn't have to pay at the end of the year. But I think that would have to be like an opt-in type of deal.
Can you imagine setting up your 401k when you're 18 years old.
That's the way to do it, though. That's how you get to early retirement.
I mean, and so, if you're a guy that's making a lot of money at 18, like max out your 401k for 4 years there. I mean, you'd be set.
Right.
So in my opinion, and I think Masoni and I have talked about this, I think I number one, I think kids should make as much as they're able to make, right? The student athletes should, on a name, image, and likeness, make as much. You can make $1 million, make $1 million. Like, I think there should be no limit on how much, there's no cap on how much these kids should make. But I do think once you get into the $100,000, a year realm, I think there needs to be, or a certain, not necessarily, it could be less, it could be $50,000 a year realm. There needs to be a certain thing in place where the athletes get 40% of the money that they are entitled to get that year. So for round numbers, if it's $100,000, they get 40,000 that year, and the rest of it goes into something similar to like a 401k, something
exactly,
right? And then by the end of your 4 years or 5 years or however long you stay at university and you graduate, now you're able for a 3-year period to draw on whatever is left over from that savings account. So for my experience, I played my last game against Florida State at Florida. I separated my shoulder. I remember sitting on my couch when the game was over, and I looked at my wife, Yesenia, and I said, what are we going to do now? We have 2 months to get out of this apartment. Or shoot, maybe even less than that, maybe a month to get out of this apartment, and my scholarship checks end as soon as I graduate, at the end of December. And so we have $2,500, maybe $3,000 in our bank account, and we have a child. Where is our money, our income going to be coming from? And so, I know I'm not the only person that's ever had to deal with that. I know there's, thousands upon thousands, probably the majority of men and women that deal with the same exact thing. Like, where's my next dollar coming from? And so I think, and maybe it's, give the kids 60% up front or for that first year. But I don't know the exact number, but I think there needs to be something where these kids save, it gains interest, during that time. And as soon as you graduate, you have, 2 years, 1 year, 3 years to draw on that money, just so that you have some type of supplemental income while you're getting your feet underneath you in the road.
No doubt. There's no doubt about that.
What you just said, though, is that might be the best example that I've heard. But that story is why name and likeness and it's a very important situation, because if you did have it, you'd say, well, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing here, and then I'll go train and get ready for the draft or whatever it's going to be.
I wasn't a NFL guy. I definitely wasn't a first round draft pick. I can tell you that. So we had no clue. If I didn't sign with an agent, and the agent wasn't super generous and helped us out for the first 5 or 6 months after college, and bro, who knows what I would be doing right now.
Right, because when it ends, it ends. You hang it up, and there's you don't get to hang out for a couple more months and figure it out. You got to go on and be on your own, and it's time to go. So I think a lot of times people don't think about that. That you said that last game for you that when that came about, people don't see it that way. It's like, oh no, man, his life's going to be great. He's a Gator guy. He's a legend. He's this. He's that. And
you really have no clue. But I do think. Not to get too far ahead of myself, but there are ways for universities to incentivize savings, and I'll leave it at that. We're trying to do some stuff in Florida. I think that would be really smart. And just look into some things to incentivize, because a lot of times kids don't want to save. They want. How easy it would be. It'd be really hard in college to blow $50,000, but shoot, I promise you, it can be done. Really
yeah. There's no doubt. When you're that age, you don't think about
clue.
when you're 50, but when you're 50 and you look back, if I would have done this, but if you could incentivize those guys to do that, to set up something for their retirement at that early age, you could really set up someone's life for retirement and for their future.
Absolutely right.
Especially if you're making a good amount of money and you're putting that in something like a 401k that grows tremendously, especially if you put it in early at 18, and by the time you're 50,
25 years is 43 years old, and that's if you do it right, man, that's good to be retired at 43. You'd be retired already.
My dad made me put $50 in when I first got a job at the school, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can't put $50 in. And I forgot about it, and now I look at where it is now, and I'm like, holy cow,
that's all it took.
That's $50. Imagine if you're maxing that out at 18, and you just stop after 4 years. You still
you're way ahead of the game.
Way ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, we'll take another quick break right here. It's a good part to stop, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about who and how and what's maybe the best way to govern all this this newfound money and opportunity for the college athletes. So we'll take our break and be back here at Douglas Jeep shortly. See you back here in a little bit.
It's time to put some spring in your step during Douglas Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram Spring Sell-Down Event. Drive a new Jeep Grand Cherokee from only $279 per month during the Jeep Celebration Event. Or choose a new Wagoneer from $549 per month. Or get behind the wheel of a new Ram 1500 Quad Cab from only $359 per month during the Ram Truck Month. Don't miss the Spring Sell-Down Sales Event going on now at Douglas Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram in Venice. Who has Spring Sell-Down savings? Douglas does!
And we're back here at the 941 Sports Zone. And as we left the conversation a little earlier, we were going to start to talk about, all the stuff that's going on, new stuff, NIL, everything else, and seeing how maybe we can come up with an idea or maybe who or how they should start to figure out a way to actually get this governed and figured out how there could be some similarities to everybody else's program. Trey, anything? I mean, should we start with the NCAA and trust that they can get something started, or do we need to get the federal government needs to get involved first to put some sort of guidelines in place and work off that?
Yeah, see, I don't think NCAA is going to make any rules or enforce the rules, but the problem is, well, what I've seen is I don't know if Congress is the answer either. Just for the pure sense that they don't really know what's going on. It's not like they're dialed in and they know, front to back what's going on in college and the real issues and stuff like that. Some of the congressmen and women are, trying to get an understanding of what NIL means. And so do you really want people making laws and rules and regulations that don't really know what's going on? So I don't know if that's necessarily the best route either, but I just know that something needs to happen, and there needs to be some type of uniformity across, all collegiate sports and for all athletes.
What do you think, John? Any ideas?
I mean, you almost think that you would want to get your coaches together and develop some sort of committee, with kind of all parties involved.
Per conferences you're talking about?
Well, I mean, I would think like if you're making that type of decision, maybe you'd want to get like someone from, a politician, some coaches, some people from the NCAA. I mean, even some players, and figure out a way what's best moving forward.
Well, it sounds like sort of like what they do when they pick for the playoffs. They got Condoleezza Rice. They got all these different people that from different walks of life are kind of making decisions on playoff teams, not necessarily money.
I mean, you would think that would be the best way to move forward. I mean, because they're obviously the way it is now. I mean, it's gonna in 3 years. I think in 3 years you're gonna get the full effect of what's really taking place, because now, I mean, you're gonna really have some superpower teams compared to what we have now. I mean, even we have it now, but it's gonna even be more. It's gonna be really, really evident in the near future.
So you only have 85 scholarships. There's no way every single year you can bring.
Well, that's not true now. Players. I mean, everyone that plays for Alabama, walk on, whoever is on scholarship because they don't pay for school. So now you have that's what I'm saying. So now Alabama school has 120 scholarships, where Kent State has 85 scholarships.
Right. So you mentioned about the conferences. So I keep hearing, man, someday the conferences are going to just take over. The NCAA, the Power 5 conferences, SEC probably leading the charge with that, are just going to say, no, we're going to be on our own. We don't need you to tell us what to do. We're going to figure it out on our own. And if that is the case, I think the idea of players, coaches, of state officials, whoever it may be, judges, it could be anything you want to say, because I've heard some of the better ideas, or at least stimulated ideas I've heard are coming from coaches. Okay, because they seem to have a lot of like I said, in Congress you have somebody who doesn't even know football from a basketball in some cases, right? Yeah. And so then you have other people who are so a coach like Mike Krzyzewski, or someone who's retired. He put a lot of. He could be a guy you say you're the chairperson for the ACC or whatever it may be if you're interested in doing this. This is cutting edge stuff. He could be involved. But one of the things I heard that I thought I liked a lot was Steve Spurrier came out and said, look, I think that there should be no money allotted or given to anybody until they've been on campus for a year. And I think, and I know that's kind of hard to do, but it's sort of brought itself out and said, hey, you got to get yourself acclimated, like almost like a red shirt year is to be the standard for a lot of folks. So maybe it's a red shirt year for the money side of things as well. But there's all those ideas are coming from places outside of the federal government or outside the NCAA. They're coming from people who have practically worked in this situation.
Hey, listen, now that they've tapped the water.
Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Even when they do say, all right, well, here's the rules and regulations. They already found a way to do what they're doing. Like, it's going to be hard to shut that off. Like, they're going to figure out a way to go around those rules and get their players. I mean, because bottom line, the problem is that there's no loyalty in the universities with their coaches, and there's no loyalty with the coaches in the universities at all anywhere.
Right. They're going.
Bottom line.
You're out the door as quick as you're in the door. Right.
Exactly.
Well, maybe Masoni, to your point, like maybe you can call it not getting paid your first year, but if the money you do earn, from NIL goes to a savings account.
Right.
I do think they're going to have to figure out, I'm not a believer in revenue sharing just because of what it's going to do to the non-revenue generating sports. But I do think there's a way your team makes it to the college football playoff, your team makes it to the NCAA tournament, the money that the school receives from those things, there should be a way to split that, because that's not guaranteed. You're not even counting on that. It's just all icing on the cake. So there could be a way to split that into an NIL pot for certain players or for all the players that are playing in those things. But I don't think there should be. I mean, the new TV deals are happening pretty soon, I believe.
Yes.
Those are obviously good deals. I don't necessarily think those can be revenue sharing or split, but I think the ones for that specific year and those specific moments, could possibly, be split throughout the university players and stuff.
And one other thing I was going to bring up also, we talked about how, the motivation for a kid to play in a bowl game, the motivation for, whatever the case may be, if there's nothing to be gained, that I don't want to do it, I'm not going to get hurt. Wouldn't it be a situation too with NIL? Could there be a bonus situation where you play in the bowl game?
Now you're talking pay for play.
Well, I don't know. I mean, is it?
It can't be performance based. I know that for sure. That's one of the laws in Florida, that you can't pay it. If you play better, you can't make more money. But obviously, it happens from a advertisement or a brand player.
Right. If there was somebody who said, "Hey, we want you in that bowl game because that's going to get us our
soda." You get us in the bowl game. Hey, we might have a little commercial for you that pays us. I mean, this ways around everything.
So that would be the thing. So let's say this crystal ball 5 years from now, is there some sort of rule book in place, or are we still in the wild west?
I think so. I think it's gonna be conference based. But the problem with conference based is it's really hard to implement rules across state lines. Like if every school is in the state of Florida, then it'd be super simple for the SEC.
Right.
If hypothetically was only in the state of Florida, it'd be easy. But now you got to cross 5, 6, 7, 8 states. It makes it tougher.
Do you think though that if they said, well, hey, every state, can we get on board with this? They think they would try to influence or get them to say, look, hey, if it's the SEC, we need Missouri, we need Alabama, we need Mississippi, everybody to get on board with this.
Yeah, every state's gonna be on board. Right.
Well, you don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that can influence stuff. I mean, who knows? But
you see. Well, it depends on what if you're a Democrat or Republican.
Well, that's a lot of politics involved. Yeah. Yes, no doubt about it.
There's just so many unknowns, No one really knows.
Yeah, and again, and that's what makes this such an interesting, conversation, because, it's you've always known that this is there. It's been out there. Things are,
right.
So now it's all out on the front, and now you got to figure out how to manage it all. And it may always be something that you're sort of catching up with. Oh, they figured this out. We got to get under the rule for this. You might be a living organism that you're kind of working with in some ways, but I think within due time, I think it'll be structured enough that there'll be some semblance of order to it. I would guess.
Yeah,
you agree?
There's no doubt about it.
All right, well, let's do this. We'll take one more quick break right now then we'll come back, and I know Trey's got a What's Bugging Me he wants to talk about. I know you have your What's Bugging Me ready?
I do.
I mean, too, as I do as well. So we'll take a quick break, come back with the What's Bugging Me section of our show, and then the predictions as well, and we'll wrap it up after that. Back here at Douglas Jeep and 941 Sports Zone in a few minutes.
It's time to put some spring in your step during Douglas Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram Spring Sell-Down Event. Drive a new Jeep Grand Cherokee from only $279 per month during the Jeep Celebration Event. Or choose a new Wagoneer from $549 per month. Or get behind the wheel of a new Ram 1500 Quad Cab from only $359 per month during the Ram Truck Month. Don't miss the spring sell-down sales event going on now at Douglas Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge, Ram in Venice. Who has spring sell-down savings? Douglas does!
And welcome back to our final segment tonight on the 941 Sports Zone. And this part of our segment is kind of fun for us. We get to kind of spout off a little bit about what's bothering or bugging us, what's bugging me section. And we actually should let Trey Burton go first since he's our guest.
First,
and the first thing to do. So
right.
Trey, what's bugging you tonight?
Well, there's two things. First thing is I can't stand the transfer portal in college sports. Can't stand it. Absolutely. I think there's a way that is good, and I think there's a way which is being used for now. It's very similar with NIL that is not used very well. And the second thing that's bothering me is, dude, some of these parents at my kids' sporting events are out of control. So they have no clue, no credibility, has never seen a field or a ball or whatever the sport is, has never even come close to doing it, and giving or yelling at the coaches and their own child. And
hey, I got some stories for you if you want to hear about some crazy. I got some stories.
So see if this sounds familiar to Trey. I was kind of asked late in the game to go coach a 4 to 6 year old soccer team for the YMCA back when my daughter was 5 years old. And I had a parent who I'm telling you, there's no way that he ever caught a ball. He has no clue. He's sitting back. And he basically walked onto the field because one other kid on the other team or whatever was pushing or doing whatever, and was like ready to go out and like I wouldn't say, but he was like ready to go do something. So dress this kid down, and I stopped, took a step from him, and said, "Where do you think you're going?" Yeah. He's like, "Well, that kid's bumped my kid." I said, "It's sports. They're going to bump into each other." And this guy was just, I mean, he lost his mind. And I'm not one to go. I figured I could handle myself, but I had to go to the authority at the YMCA and say, this guy's got to go. And so his kid's going to pay the price for it, but he can't be out here walking on the field ready to challenge some 4 or 5 year old kid because he's bumping into him. It's crazy. Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. All right, you're next.
I'm next?
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you what's bugging me is we got these kids, high school kids, and college coaches that are they have these fake offers, and it bugs the heck out of me. We got kids that are quarterbacks that are posting offers that haven't taken a snap in high school yet, and they're posting they have these offers. Now I know good and well that offer is not real, and it's almost, I think some coaches use it as recruiting tools, and I think it just bugs the heck out of me when I see this. I don't know why, but it bothers me. And
how long have they been doing that for?
It's been going on for like 5-6 years. I don't know when it started, but it wasn't happening when you were in school.
Oh.
But it has started recently. They call it the non-committable offer.
Okay.
And so what does that mean? What does it mean? What does a non-committable offer mean? What are you offering? What are you offering? You're not offering anything. You're offering what? That the kid can tweet it. I'm so blessed to get an offer from this place, but it's not real.
And then that they create a false narrative, and the kid thinks.
Yeah. So I keep these stuff. I keep this stuff. So I'm looking at so we have signing days. So I'm waiting. This kid's these got kids that say, "Oh, I got an offer from USF." Well, on signing day, you're going. Where are you going? You're not going anywhere. Why aren't you going to USF? You got an offer from USF. You're not going anywhere. Doesn't make sense.
He might have been Florida Southern, not University of South Florida.
No, they're not even going. No, they're not even going anywhere. I got an offer from USF. They're posting the coach's name. They're posting the picture of USF, and they're not going anywhere. Doesn't make sense to me.
That's what's bugging you then.
Bugging.
That's bugging you good. So, well, Trey, guess what? I'm the transfer portal guy as well. What's bugging me because
he is. He told me before you even came on. He's like, I'm transfer portal.
And I'll expand a little bit on what you said. Part of the thing with the portal is that the intentions of it have merit. Okay, I think there's merit to it, but you got a kid who's he's going to go in the portal, and he goes and he says, I'm going to this school, whatever I'm going to take, and then 3 weeks later, He's like, well, I'm having to work a little harder than I thought I had to work, and all of a sudden now I want to go again, and want to go again, and so it's like, and I'm not, it's you're seeing it, all over the place in basketball. I mean, basketball seems to be the one where you're like the LSU girls basketball team. They won a national championship, 9 new players inside of a year, and they all again so it's
portal.
Through the portal.
Well, the fact that they're testing the portal it's out of control. Like you can't test the portal. You're either in the portal or you're not in the portal. Like what's the deal?
That's exactly right. It's become a game, and I think a game that they don't recognize that there's.
How about the schools letting the kids that are in the portal play in the game?
Oh, yeah, I know.
What is that?
Yeah.
So I think the problem with the portal, and one of the reasons why it's so bad right now, is because NIL and the portal happen at the same time, and like people have a hard time separating each one. If one would have happened at a time, and then 10 years later the other one would have happened, I don't know if it would have been as big of a deal. But since you have both of them intertwined, I think it's a massive issue. I think, in my own personal opinion, I think you should be able to transfer one time wherever you want.
I agree.
The head coach, the head coach has no responsibility. He can leave if he wants to leave. So I think a player should be able to leave one time freely wherever you want to go. Don't care. You now can leave a second time only if the head coach that recruited you to come to that school left. So that's my personal thought.
Well, that's going to happen.
What's going to happen?
The coach that recruited you is going to leave. I mean, that's going to happen.
I'm talking about head coach, not like position.
Oh.
Position.
Well, I'm saying that's most likely going to happen. I mean, how many coaches are there for 4 years?
Well, nowadays not a
actually
lot.
Going to be more like 5 years because he's recruiting you. So, how many coaches stick around for 5 years? Not many.
Unless you're in the first recruiting cycle, you're probably not going to see the end of the tenure for your coach.
Yeah,
no doubt. But it is. It's just it's frustrating because I said, looking at it, you're like, I mean, it's become so common now just to pick up and go. Hey, sometimes how do you learn how to deal with adversity? If you go somewhere and you got a guy who's ahead of you or a guy behind you, whatever it may be, when are you gonna step up and say, I'll take on the challenge? Yeah. Or do you just look for a place that needs a small forward or a guy needs a wide receiver? That doesn't make any sense.
You can also look at it and say, like, how many kids are 18 years old that make the right choice the first time? Like, there's not many of them, So that's why I think they should be able to freely go. But then the second time, like, I remember Muschamp came in to Florida, and like one of the first things I said to him was like, "You would never have recruited me. Like, so like I'm already behind the 8 ball to start out with. So like, I don't think it's fair for kids to have to sit there and suffer, when the head coach changed because you're not the recruits anymore and they want you out. What happens now? As soon as a new head coach comes in, then after that first year, gone. 30 guys. You know what I mean? Like all the kids that they don't want, they're all gone because now they're able to leave. So I don't know. I think they should go twice.
No, exactly right. Like Wes Wolf, like he's been starting quarterback for 2 years at ODU. New OC comes in. Hayden Wolf. Yeah. New OC comes in, brings the quarterback with him. Wes is in the portal. I mean, I get it. Right. I mean, I get it.
No doubt. All right, predictions. Any predictions for us tonight, Trey?
I like the Lightning to beat the Maple Leafs in probably 7 games like they were the last 3 years in the first round. But yeah, Lightning tonight. What do you think?
Listen, I don't have any. I'm too hot. Like I was 8 and 9. I'm too hot. I gotta get an ice bath tonight. I'm gonna. Actually, my heater in my hot tub is broken, so I'm gonna throw some ice in there, get in the hot tub, get in the ice bath, cool off. Next week I'll have some picks. I'm just too hot right now.
That's fine. I mean, 8 out of 9 is pretty.
And then I'm on fire.
Good.
I'm on fire.
Pretty good.
I gotta get an ice tub.
And Trey, I talking about the Lightning. I do have a hockey one as well. Same with the Lightning. I think they're gonna. My prediction is they're gonna split. They're going to go 1-1 in Toronto. They're going to come out of at least one victory. So I want to get. So
when's the first game?
It's tonight.
When's the second game?
Two nights.
2 nights in a row. Okay, so we'll know by Thursday if you're right.
Right. So that's okay. Because I predicted one a little distance on it, which is coming up next week. With
so
the
hopefully
draft.
we'll be putting little social media clips.
Right.
Of your one and your split.
There's going to be a split. At least they're going to at least one game in Toronto. I think Vasilevsky will stand on his head in one of those games, and that's the difference in that series is that for sure.
We got Florida versus South Carolina in baseball too. Big weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, okay. And a local, Michael Robertson had a game-winning hit the other night. So
nice
for UF, and I think they're ranked 3rd in the country right now. They're doing real well. They're doing that really well. Hey, listen, Trey. One more question I was going to ask you, kind of, because obviously, John Peacock was your coach back in the day, and any one particular story or one particular moment you remember from your Venice High School tenure that you could want to talk about with about Coach Peacock here.
Have you talked about it? Was this
No.
Okay. All right.
No, this is. I'm
not
throwing it right.
rehearsed?
This is just a little ending
I don't want to
thing here.
Rehearsed. You know.
No. If he's like I said anything that he can remember that in a game or situation that stands out as you being his coach.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, you put me on the spot, bro. I don't. You want a good story or a bad story?
Either one. The bad ones are always better.
No, I don't have anything bad. You put me on the spot. I just know like there was not any other person in the world I would rather be my head coach in high school, and just some of the things that he helped me walk through, some of the things that life lessons he taught me, not just me, I mean hundreds of kids, and the way he's built the program from literally the ground up. We were 1-9, Turd Dynasty my freshman year. Almost left to go for somewhere else that was sick of losing, and really glad that I stuck it out and didn't have to go anywhere else. But next time I come on the show, I'll have some really good stories.
All right,
I'm gonna cry now. You know?
Absolute clown. He's so much fun to be around. He's absolutely hilarious, but an unbelievable coach.
Yes, we do know that he is a much funnier person than he cracks me up all the time too. So and
you're not supposed to let people know that.
He's nice. He's an angry person. So, all right. Cool. With that, Trey, thanks a lot for being here tonight. This is a lot of fun, and we couldn't have a better anybody in the country better to talk about the NIL situation than you, obviously. And we appreciate you being here. And hopefully, this is the first of many times you get to be with us on 941 Sports Zone.
Thanks for having me, bro. Much love. I forgot my prediction. I'm whooping you in golf tomorrow, John.
All right, there it is.
Predicting that.
He'll double down on the back nine, and I'll end up losing. So that's what always happens. Don't put anything on it with him.
Do you guys play with a handicap?
We do occasionally.
Okay,
yeah,
right,
occasionally
right.
There's a little something, depending how I'm playing that day too. So, all right. With that, thank you for
having me. Talk to you soon.
All right. Yes, sir.
All right, for everybody, thank you for watching tonight. We appreciate everybody out there in the YouTube zone watching us on 941 Sports Zone. So, with that, we're going to sign off from here at Douglas Jeep. I'm John Massoni, here with John Peacock. We'll see you here next time on the 941 Sports Zone.